Freedom Publishing House, the leading publisher in academic materials across the globe.
IELTS Target 9. Published by Freedom Publishing House and Freedom Academy Press, 2024. This recording is a copyright. Test 1. This is the IELTS listening test by Target 9. You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings would be played once only. The test is in 4 parts. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Now turn to part 1. You will hear a recording about a man calling an electrical company for a job vacancy. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 10. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 10.
Hi. My name is John. I saw your company's advertisement in the newspaper regarding the job opening in which you require technical staff. I have seen that you have advertised job openings of several kinds. But I am calling to know about the position for the electrical engineer in your company. May I know about the job requirements and salary?
Hi John. My name is Linda. I am the manager at Hydroelectricity Electricals. First, I would like to tell you about our candidate requirements. We are looking for someone who is fresher candidate. We do not want experienced candidate for this post. We need someone who can work in the night shifts. You can also be posted in the day shift, but right now we are looking for a candidate who can work in nights. Are you comfortable with that?
Oh, absolutely. I am a fresher and was looking for a company where I can learn a great deal of things. I can easily work in any shift, day or night. What about the salary, and do you also provide lodging and cab facility?
Although old staff get this facility, but we don't provide any accommodation or cab facility to new joining. But we are planning to provide such facilities to all of our staff in the near future. As far as the salary is concerned, you will be informed about that at the day of your interview. For the interview, you need to provide me some details. May I know your phone number?
Oh yes. My phone number is 763899098. Oh. I am sorry. It is 89 at the end. I will repeat, 763899089. Is there anything else that you need to ask?
Yes. We also want to know about your qualifications or any job experience that you have in this field.
Well, recently I was pursuing my master's in management, but I had to leave the course midway. So I don't think it will count. But I am a qualified electrical engineer. Along with that, I have an experience of 1 year combined in several training programs. But as far as the job experience is concerned, I do not have it. Apart from this, I would also like to know about the job timings.
Okay. So, your qualifications are electrical engineer. Well, your job timings will vary according to the shifts. You will be given information about that on the day of the interview. I have noted the required information, and I am going to put you through a process. Your interview is scheduled for Friday, which is the 12th of March. Oh, I am sorry. It is the 13th of March. 12th is Thursday. On the day of the interview, you must bring your original documents like your qualification certificates, along with the training certificate.
I want to ask one more question. Do you provide food during job, or we need to bring our own?
Yes. We provide lunch and dinner to our employees. Since you will be working in the night shifts, lunch and evening supper is out of question. So, You will only be entitled for dinner.
Oh. That's great.
I hope I have provided you with all the information. Is there anything you need to ask?
No. I do not have any questions.
All right. Thanks for calling Lloyd Electricals. We hope you have a great day.
That is the end of part 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers to part 1. Part 2. You will hear a talk about an industrial hub. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 13. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 13.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Sunrise Industrial Hub. To start your visit, I'm just going to give you a brief report on the history of the gallery before letting you roam about on your own. I won't keep you long. Okay? Now, from where we're standing, you've got a good view of the canal over there. And it was because of this fast-flowing water that this site was a natural place for manufacturing works. The water and the availability of raw materials in the area, like stones and wood, and also the abundance of local resources, like oil and gas, all made this site appropriate for industry from a very early time. Due to its geographical location, air was the main source of power for the early industries, and some of the windmills were first established in the 16th century, would you believe? At that time, local technicians first built a metal furnace just behind the village here, on the bend in the canal. By the 17th and 18th centuries, the region supported more than 115 wind generators, and many of these continued to operate well into the 19th century. Following the invention and the subsequent development of railways, industrial centers could shift from riverside and rural locations to urban areas. As a result, industrial villages like this one became increasingly uncommon. This provides a brief historical overview, and if you have additional inquiries or seek further details, feel free to ask or explore our comprehensive guidebook.
Before you hear rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 14 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 14 to 20.
I will provide you with a layout of the site and then guide you through the various locations. Subsequently, you can explore each area at your own pace and examine everything firsthand. I've indicated the location of the canal on the left. And running along the bottom is City Road. Understood? Now, standing at the entrance marked at the bottom, you will immediately notice the reception to our right. While you may not require it with your group booking, just beyond the reception are the restrooms, an essential point to know. Directly in front of us is the parking area, and to the left, near the entry gate, is the information center, where you can obtain copies of the guide, like the one I have here. Moving past the parking area, all the structures are arranged in a semicircle around a central park. The prominent structure at the top is the main factory, housing the forge and serving as the site for smelting metal and casting tools, as you'll witness. In the top right-hand corner, the building with larger windows functions as the display shop, exhibiting samples of tools made throughout history. In the top left corner is the finishing shop, where tools underwent sharpening and completion. Adjacent to the finishing shop, on one side is the control room, and on the other is the restaurant, which, despite not being very old, offers delightful traditional cuisines. The series of buildings on the left side comprises the hostels, constructed for laborers toward the end of the 18th century. These hostels retain furnishings from that period, providing a glimpse into the living conditions of common people. Across the park from the hostels, you'll notice sheds where horses were kept for transporting products. The separate building in front of the sheds is the front office, which still displays some old accounts. For those interested in a guided tour, I'll be commencing at the control room. If you'd like to join, please follow me, ladies and gentlemen.
That is the end of part 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers to part 2. Part 3. You will hear a conversation between students Gary and Lisa about their assignment on Banff National Park. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 30.
Hi Gary. So, finally I managed to complete the assignment about the Banff National Park.
That's great. I have completed mine as well. So, let's just talk about the main points and see if there's any discrepancy.
Absolutely. I'll start first. So, Banff National Park is Canada's oldest national park, established in 1885. Located in Alberta's Rocky Mountains, 180 kilometers west of Calgary, Banff encompasses 6,641 square kilometers of mountainous terrain, with many glacier and ice fields, dense coniferous forest, and alpine landscapes.
Right. Now let's talk about the Icefields Parkway, which is located in the northwest. The Icefields Parkway extends from Lake Louise, connecting to Jasper National Park in the north. Provincial Forests and Yoho National Park are neighbors to the west, while Kootenay National Park is located to the south and Kanaskis Country to the southeast. The main commercial center of the park is the town of Banff, in the Bow River Valley.
Now let's move on to transport. The Canadian Pacific Railway was instrumental in Banff's early years, building the Banff Springs Hotel and Chateau Lake Louise, and attracting tourists through extensive marketing and promotion. In the early 20th century, roads were built in Banff, at times by war internees from World War I, and through Great Depression-era public works projects. Since the 1960s, park accommodations have been open all year to about 15 million tourists, with annual tourist visits to Banff mounting to over 5 million in the 1990s. Millions more pass through the park on the Trans-Canada Highway.
Unfortunately, the tourist influx has caused damage to the environment. As Banff has over 3 million visitors annually, the health of its ecosystem has been threatened. In the mid-1990s, Parks Canada responded by initiating a 2-year study which resulted in management recommendations and new strategies that aim to preserve ecological integrity.
As far as the climate is concerned, Banff National Park has a subarctic climate with 3 ecoregions, including montane, subalpine, and alpine. The higher elevations have less of vegetation, but the forests are dominated by lodgepole pine at lower elevations, and the Engelmann spruce in higher ones below the tree-line, above which is primarily rocks and ice. Mammal species such as the grizzly bear, cougar, wolverine, elk, bighorn sheep and moose are found, along with hundreds of bird species and a very few reptiles and amphibians. The mountains are formed from sedimentary rocks which were pushed east over newer rock strata, between 80 and 55 million years ago.
Yes. But we cannot forget to talk about the geography of Banff. Over the past few million years, glacier have at times covered most of the park, but today are found only on the mountain slopes, though they include the Columbia Icefield, the largest uninterrupted glacial mass in the Rockies. Erosion from water and ice have carved the mountains into their current form.
That's true. Throughout its history, Banff National Park has been shaped by tension between conservationist and land exploitation interests. The park was established on November 25, 1885 as Banff Hot Springs Reserve, in response to conflicting claims over who discovered hot springs there and who had the right to develop the hot springs for commercial interests. The conservationists prevailed when Prime Minister John A. Macdonald set aside the hot springs as a small, protected reserve, which was later expanded to include Lake Louise and other areas extending north to the Columbia Icefield.
Oh. I forgot to mention the construction of the railway, which happened in 1871. No. Actually, something else happened in 1871. With the admission of British Columbia to Canada, Canada agreed to build a transcontinental railroad in 1871. Construction of the railroad began in 1875, with Kicking Horse Pass chosen, over the more northerly Yellowhead Pass, as the route through the Canadian Rockies. 10 years later, on November 7, 1885, the last spike was driven in Craigielashi, British Columbia.
That is the end of part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers to part 3. Part 4. You will hear a lecture about hydroelectricity. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
As we discussed solar energy in the last lecture, today, we will focus on hydroelectricity. As the world is moving towards sustainability, we must all focus on the potential benefits of these renewable sources. So, beginning with a lecture, I would first like to introduce hydroelectricity and some facts related to it. Hydroelectricity is electricity produced from hydropower. In 2015, hydropower generated 16.6% of the world's total electricity and 70% of all renewable electricity, and was expected to increase by about 3.1% each year for the next 25 years. Hydropower is produced in 150 countries, with the Asia-Pacific region generating 33% of global hydropower. There are several countries that produce great amounts of electricity through hydroelectricity such as USA, Russia, and China, are the largest hydroelectricity producer, with 920 kilowatt-hour of production in 2013, representing 16.9% of domestic electricity use. The cost of hydroelectricity is relatively low, making it a competitive source of renewable electricity. The hydro station consumes no water. Unlike coal or gas plants, the typical cost of electricity from a hydro station larger than 10 megawatts is 3 to 5 US cents per kilowatt hour. With a dam and reservoir, it is also a flexible source of electricity, since the amount produced by the station can be varied up or down very rapidly, as little as a few seconds, to adapt to changing energy demands. Once a hydroelectric complex is constructed, the project produces no direct waste, and it generally has a considerably lower output level of greenhouse gases. However, when constructed in lowland rainforest areas, where inundation of a part of the forest is necessary, they emit up to 3 to 4 times more greenhouse gases. Hydropower has been used since ancient times to grind flour and perform other tasks. In the mid-1770s, French engineer Bernard Forest published Architecture hydraulique, which described vertical and horizontal axis hydraulic machines. At the beginning of the 20th century, many small hydroelectric power stations were being constructed by commercial companies in mountains near metropolitan areas. Grenoble, France held the International Exhibition of Hydropower and Tourism, in which thousands were involved in organizing the event, which was graced by over 1 million visitors. By 1920, when 40% of the power produced in the United States was hydroelectric, the Federal Power Act was enacted into law. The act created the Federal Power Commission to regulate hydroelectric power stations on federal land and water. As the power stations became larger, their related dams developed additional purposes, including flood control and irrigation. Federal funding became necessary for large-scale development, and federally owned corporations, such as the Tennessee Valley Authority in 1933 and the Bonneville Power Administration in 1937, were created. Additionally, the Bureau of Reclamation, which had begun a series of western U.S. irrigation projects in the early 20th century, was now constructing large hydroelectric projects such as the 1928 Hoover Dam. The United States Army Corps of Engineers was also involved in hydroelectric development, completing the Bonneville Dam in 1937. And being recognized by the Flood Control Act of 1936 as the premier federal flood control agency. Hydroelectric power stations continued to become larger throughout the 20th century. Hydropower was referred to as white coal, because a large chunk of electricity was now produced by this method in the 20th century. Hoover Dam's initial 1,345 megawatt power station was the world's largest hydroelectric power station in 1936. It was eclipsed by the 6,809 megawatt Grand Gully Dam in 1942. The Itaipu Dam opened in 1984 in South America as the largest, producing 14 gigawatt, but was surpassed in 2008 by the Three Gorges Dam in China at 22.5 gigawatt. Hydroelectricity would eventually supply some countries, including Norway, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Paraguay, and Brazil, with over 85% of their electricity. The United States currently has over 2,000 hydroelectric power stations that supply 6.4% of its total electrical production output, which is 49% of its renewable electricity.
That is the end of part 4 and the listening test. You now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet.